Excuse me. Hey, hey everybody, Tony D and Little Joan here with another hot take. This one, I don't know how to describe it, but you know, when I was a kid, organizations like the SPLC, the ACLU, these were lauded institutions that they fought against the establishment. And now they've become the establishment. It's like the old saying: you either die a hero or live long enough to become the villain. The SPLC, they were all about fighting racism, and I think what happened over the years, the racism in this country kind of peaked around, I would say, the 1920s. The reason I say it peaked then is because in the 1920s, there was actually members of the KKK in Congress as a political party. And that was kind of the height of their power and the height of their membership. And everything after that, they kind of went because you had black people drafted in. I'm not sure there was a lot of black people drafted into World War I, but I know quite a bit of them were in World War II. They had their own battalions, and separate but equal. And by the time you get around to the Civil Rights era, you're really looking at the last gasp of these groups like the KKK. That was their last gasp. They were on their way out then, and after civil rights, they just went into a decline. By the time I was aware of these groups when I was a kid, they would show up at the local high school and have their little wacky rally and burn a cross or whatever. And it would be covered in the newspaper. Most people wouldn't show up for it. And the few people who did would just yell and curse and flip them the finger. And then they'd be on their merry way, and that would be it. And over the years, they just died off. There wasn't enough of a membership to justify them even coming back to an area like this. And now they've faded into mostly obscurity. And pretty much everybody is aware of their deal and fights against them. So unless you're some sort of total contrarian racist that wants to have their life ruined, most people aren't interested in any of that. The world has evolved far past it. But for groups like the SPLC, I think what happened was they could not evolve. They could not find enough of the racism. There were crusading lawyers, I think, in the SPLC, who did have experience with the hardcore guys who did horrible things back in the day, but then they got older, and most of those guys faded away or ended up in prison or dead. And then, you were left for a few thousand of these people. It wasn't a real threat, It was, and now it's not. And that's reality. It's not. It doesn't mean that those beliefs aren't less abhorrent somehow. It's the difference between, Napoleon's army in its heyday and after Napoleon died. When Napoleon died, I'm sure there was still some of the French army left, and I'm sure someone could have rallied the banner of Napoleon again, maybe after he died, but it would have been tough, and it wouldn't have compared to when Napoleon was alive at his peak, and that's sort of the difference. So running around and pretending that there's a racist under every person, or that every white person, or even not even every white person, every person now, a lot of these leftists say, just bubbling just under the surface is a racism just waiting to get out if one wrong thing happens. It's just not true. So you get the SPLC, white teachers are weaponizing their whiteness to harm black students. This is utter nonsense in my view. Just complete nonsense. What the hell is the SPLC doing? The article published by SPLC's Teaching Tolerance Division outlines how white people weaponize their entitlement, anger, and need for retaliation, feigned fear, and finally, white fragility. This to me is the damage that critical race theory is doing. It's driven what used to be these cool liberals who used to fight real problems, and the next generation has just turned into a bunch of virtue signaling a-holes digging up every rock they can find and pointing underneath it and saying racism. They've turned into the busybodies that they used to fight. They've you know, you either die a hero or live long enough to be the villain. I mean, this is it, and they've become the villain in their own ways, and it's just getting worse. I think the SPLC. I mean, it's just the problems that they once fought aren't there as they were. And rather than acknowledging that and maybe scaling down and doing something else, they're just looking for monsters to destroy. And this is a created monster that, I mean, this to me makes no sense. This is like accusing everybody. This is like saying, you have to keep giving us money or instantly everybody will turn into a racist again. It's sad because these kinds of organizations used to be useful. They used to be admired, and now they're just an excuse for everybody to virtue signal, I believe. And of particular sadness to me is the ACLU. So here's the ACLU in Iowa. They had a case where somebody burned books, LGBTQ books, in a public library, and they fought to have those books, kept in the library. Fine. They're protecting the freedom of speech of the authors. And you can read about their 100 years of fighting banned books and banned radio and banned internet. But then just recently, you have this ACLU lawyer apparently stopping the circulation of this book, and these ideas is 100% a hill I will die on. That seems to fly in the face of the banned books that the ACLU used to fight against. And the book is called Irreversible Damage, The Transgender Craze That's Seducing Our Daughters by Abigail Shire. It was up on the Target website, and then it was suddenly gone, apparently by somebody who complained about it on Twitter. Now, this would have been something that the ACLU would have championed and said, well, you have to put that book back. You know, that's you're banning the book. You're being terrible. But not anymore, because this book aligns, I suppose, with the beliefs of this lawyer. He's willing to destroy those ideas. Even though the ACLU was the same organization that defended not the bad guys from World War II, but people in America who aped them in Skokie. I think it was back in the 60s or 70s, I want to say. A small group of them, obviously. And they defended them. They defended their freedom of speech. But they're not defending freedom of speech by defending Target's actions. Now, I don't think there's really a lawsuit here necessarily, but for the lawyer to come out and say, hooray, censorship, seemingly, I would say that this is a disgrace. It's a disgrace to the great legacy of the ACLU. And they've, in my view, gone down the rabbit hole of identity politics just behind the SPLC. I think it's because, liberals were cool. They were dynamic. They did the hard things because they knew they were right. And now they don't understand that their belief system wasn't the metric. It was about the principles of speech, freedom of speech. It wasn't about their personal beliefs. It was about freedom. It was about the right to say and protect the speech with that you disagree with, as George Orwell said. I just butchered that quote. If freedom of speech is to mean anything, you must have the speech that you find abhorrent free. And if you find this abhorrent, That's fine. You could say it, but to celebrate the dismissal of this book is wrong. It doesn't matter what's in the book. They're getting rid of books on Amazon too, and that should be something the ACLU should be like, well, that's wrong. That's wrong, Amazon. You should put those books back. Now, Amazon's a private company, just like Target. They can put whatever books they want. But it's the principle of the thing. You have to be consistent in your principles. In my view, the ACLU and the SPLC are just, oh, we gotta cater to our audience. We gotta keep that money rolling in, which essentially makes them a bunch of grifters. And I, for one, won't be donating any money to any of these grifters. I don't care how much they virtue signal.